Let's just jump right in. We all think our lives are defined by these huge, life-altering moments, right? But what if they're not? What if the smallest, most insignificant moments are actually the ones that matter most? What if one tiny choice could ripple out and change, well, everything? Just picture this. You're running for the bus, and you miss it by like 10 seconds. So annoying, right? But no big deal in the grand scheme of things. Or is it? See, because you missed that bus, you don't meet that person who was waiting at the next stop, the person you were supposed to fall in love with, get married to. And the kids you were supposed to have, they just never exist. Think about that. 10 seconds didn't just make you late, they completely rewrote your reality. And this isn't just some fun thought experiment. It is the very core of a truly revolutionary scientific idea. It's called the butterfly effect, and it's a huge piece of what we call chaos theory. Now, I know that definition sounds super academic and dry, but all it really means is that in any complex system, like, say, the weather or your life, the starting point is absolutely everything. The tiniest, most microscopic change at the beginning can blow up into enormous, totally unpredictable results later on. And you know, this whole world-changing concept didn't come from some dramatic eureka moment. Nope. It came from a typo, a simple rounding error in a clunky, room-sized computer back in 1961. So here's the story. This meteorologist, Edward Lorenz, is running a weather simulation. And to save a little time, he decides to restart it from the middle, typing in the numbers from an earlier printout. But he got a little lazy. He rounded off the number, putting in 0.506 instead of the full, more precise 0.506127. I mean, that's a difference of less than 1 part in 1,000. It should have meant nothing.
But it wasn't nothing. When Lorenz came back to check on it, the weather forecast was completely, wildly different from the original. That tiny, seemingly harmless mistake had snowballed, creating an entirely new virtual storm system. It was basically the first digital proof that, yeah, the flap of a butterfly's wings could in fact start a hurricane on the other side of the world.
So, that's the theory, born from a harmless little computer error. But what happens when that tiny, initial condition isn't a number, but a human choice with the entire world hanging in the balance? Let's talk about a real-world example where the stakes could not have been higher. The date is September 26, 1983. We are at the absolute peak of the Cold War. Just a few weeks before this, the Soviets shot down a Korean passenger jet. Nerves are completely frayed. The world is basically a powder keg, and both sides have their fingers right on the big red button. Deep inside a secret Soviet command bunker, a lieutenant colonel named Stanislav Petrov is on duty. All of a sudden, alarms just start screaming. The early warning system is reporting a missile launch from the US. Now, protocol is crystal clear. He reports it up the chain, and that triggers a massive, world-ending counterattack. But Petrov hesitates. A few minutes later, the system reports 4 more missiles. The pressure must have been unbearable, and yet he disobeys direct orders. He reports it as a system malfunction. For 20 minutes, 20 agonizing minutes, the fate of the world rests on his decision, and nobody even knows it. Finally, the confirmation comes in. Ground radar shows nothing. The sky is empty. So why did he take that insane risk? Well, his logic was actually pretty simple, but totally profound. He said later that any real first strike from America would be a massive, all-out attack. We're talking hundreds of missiles, not just 5. It didn't add up. It was a gut feeling, a human instinct that told him to trust his brain over the machine. And it turned out the satellite had just mistaken the sun's reflection off some clouds for missile launches. Petrov's single choice, his decision to wait, to question the data, that was the butterfly's wing flap that stopped a global nuclear holocaust. It was a positive butterfly effect, and it probably saved millions, if not billions, of lives. Well, what happens when the butterfly flaps the other way? For that, we've got to turn from history to one of the most famous warnings in all of science fiction. A story that kind of spookily came up with this whole idea a decade before that scientist, Lorenz, even did. In Ray Bradbury's classic story, A Sound of Thunder, a company takes rich clients back 65 million years to hunt a T-Rex. The rules are incredibly strict. Stay on this floating anti-gravity path. Don't touch a single leaf, don't change a thing. But of course, one of the hunters, a guy named Eccles, sees the dinosaur, completely panics, and steps off the path. When the group gets back to their own time, 2055, the world is wrong. It's subtle at first, a weird smell in the air. Words on a sign are spelled differently. But then they realize the really big change. A recent presidential election had a different outcome. A moderate, reasonable leader lost, and a fascist dictator won. All because of that one little misstep.
So what was the cause of this whole dystopian mess? Eccles looks down at the mud on his boots. And there it is, a single, beautiful, crushed butterfly. That one tiny death, 65 million years ago, cascaded through history and changed everything. And all of this leads to the ultimate question, right? If you could go back, could you fix things? Could you fix your own mistakes? Well, science fiction and actual physics have a pretty loud and clear warning for us. Probably not, because you'd smash right into a paradox. The most famous one is called the grandfather paradox. It's this perfect, impossible loop. So, follow me here. You go back in time and, you accidentally kill your own grandfather before he meets your grandmother. Well, that means one of your parents is never born, which in turn means you are never born. So, who went back in time to kill him in the first place? The action erases the person who did the action. It's a total contradiction. It's a paradox that suggests that any change to the past, no matter how tiny, whether it's stopping a dictator or just stepping on a butterfly, creates a contradiction so massive it could basically short-circuit reality itself. You can't change the past because it's already happened the way it happened. Which leaves us all with one final, kind of unsettling thought. Look, we can't time travel, but we are all constantly moving forward, making choices. Every single second. The words you chose to say, the text you sent, the bus you either caught or just barely missed. Every one of those is a flap of a butterfly's wings. And you will never, ever know which of your tiny, everyday actions has already set a storm in motion, changing not just your future, but maybe the future of the entire world. So, what tiny choice did you make today that changed everything forever?